4 miles from one of the most visited islands on Earth, something has been building in silence for nearly 400 years. A magma chamber has been hidden beneath the seafloor, growing steadily since 1650, and it was missed entirely by every standard monitoring method until 2022. The volcano it belongs to, Columbbo, sits just 7 kilometers northeast of Santorini, Greece, in water shallow enough that a future eruption would be explosive, tsunami-genic, and minutes from shore. But that is not the part that changed everything. In January of 2025, more than 28,000 earthquakes tore through the crust between Santorini and Kolumbo over the span of a single month. 11,000 people fled the island, and when scientists finally traced the cause, they discovered something no one had confirmed before. These two volcanoes, long believed to be separate systems, are connected. They share the same deep reservoir of magma, and during the crisis, they were exchanging it in real time. The warning signs started quietly. In mid-2024, instruments on Santorini picked up a gradual uplift of the caldera floor just a few centimeters. Carbon dioxide and hydrogen emissions rose from central vents. It went largely unnoticed. Then in early January 2025, seismic activity beneath Santorini intensified. By January 27th at 7 p.m. UTC, an earthquake swarm ignited roughly 10 kilometers northeast of the island right over the Columbbo volcanic field. Within days, the swarm accelerated. On February 3rd, Greek authorities shut down schools on Santorini, Ios, Anafi, and Amorgos. Emergency crews landed on the island. Hotels were ordered to drain their swimming pools because the weight and movement of water could destabilize buildings under sustained shaking. By that point, residents were feeling a tremor every 10 to 20 minutes. On February 5th, the strongest quake struck, magnitude 5.2, roughly 28 kilometers from Amorgos. By February 6th, the Greek government declared a state of emergency on Santorini. Over 11,000 people had already left. The ferry port in Fira looked, as one returning worker described it, like the middle of summer, except it was February and everyone was trying to leave. Start in the eastern Mediterranean, move southeast from Athens, roughly 200 kilometers across the Aegean, and you reach the Cyclades. Santorini sits at the southern edge, the shattered rim of a volcanic caldera created around 3,600 years ago by one of the largest eruptions in human history. 7 kilometers to the northeast, beneath 500 meters of water, sits Columbbo. It is the largest of at least 25 submarine volcanic cones that stretch in a line to the northeast, all part of the Columbbo volcanic field. And beyond this region, the Hellenic volcanic arc curves across the southern Aegean, fueled by the African plate diving beneath the Aegean microplate. This is the same tectonic engine that powered the Minoan eruption. In 1956, 2 earthquakes, magnitude 7.4 and 7.2, struck 13 minutes apart between Santorini and Amorgos, triggering a tsunami. In January of 2025, the earthquake swarm ignited in exactly that corridor. For decades, Santorini and Kolumbo were treated as independent volcanic systems, with separate magma sources and separate risk profiles. Petrological evidence supported distinct shallow reservoirs. Monitoring focused on one or the other, never both as a single system. But in September of 2025, a study led by Dr. Marius Isken, a geophysicist at the GFZ Helmholtz Center in Potsdam, and Dr. Jens Karstens, a marine geophysicist at GEOMAR in Kiel, was published in the journal Nature. Their analysis? Integrating data from land-based seismic stations, ocean bottom sensors deployed inside Columbo's crater, GPS stations, satellite radar, and an AI-driven earthquake detection pipeline, reconstructed what had happened beneath the surface with unprecedented resolution. The magma had risen in pulses from 18 kilometers deep, ascending to just 3 kilometers below the seafloor. A sheet of molten rock, a dike roughly 13 kilometers long, had sliced laterally through the crust. And it originated not from beneath Santorini, but from a mid-crustal reservoir beneath Columbbo, at a depth of about 7.5 kilometers. Santorini's inflation in the months before the crisis had preceded and likely triggered the intrusion. The two volcanoes are hydraulically connected. They share a deep feeder system, and during the crisis, as Santorini's surface rose by more than 10 centimeters, Columbo's seafloor sank by as much as 32 centimeters. They were redistributing magma between them. Isken described the seismic activity as typical of magma ascending through the crust, breaking rock and forming pathways. Karstens, who happened to be on Santorini when the swarm began and received AI-processed earthquake data every 6 hours, put it more simply. There were days, he said, when he looked toward the horizon thinking he was about to see something out there. But that was only half the problem. This crisis did not emerge from nowhere. It landed on top of a threat that had been building for centuries. In October 2022, a team led by Kajate Krapkiewicz, a geophysicist at Imperial College London, published a study in the journal Geochemistry, Geophysics, Geosystems that revealed something no traditional method had ever detected. They used full waveform inversion, a technique his colleague Michel Pilato compared to a medical ultrasound for a volcano, to image a magma chamber beneath Columbbo that extended from roughly 2 to 4 kilometers below sea level and was about 600 meters wide. The chamber had been growing at an average rate of 4 million cubic meters per year since the last eruption in 1650. Its current volume is approximately 1.4 cubic kilometers. That is roughly 1/3 of the volume estimated to have been expelled during the eruption of 1650. During that event, pyroclastic flows crossed the sea surface and reached Santorini. Toxic gases killed 70 people, and tsunamis generated run-up heights of 20 meters on the island of Ios. Krapkiewicz warned that if the growth rate continues, within the next 150 years, Columbbo could reach 2 cubic kilometers of melt, the estimated threshold for a repeat event. The authors made clear that the system's characteristics point to a highly explosive eruption, comparable in style, though lesser in magnitude, to the Hunga Tonga eruption of 2022. 28,000 earthquakes in 1 month, 300 million cubic meters of magma intruding as a single dike, a seafloor drop of 32 centimeters above Columbbo, a surface rise of 10 centimeters on Santorini, and all of this 7 kilometers from an island that hosts 15,000 residents and 3.5 million tourists every year. On Santorini during the crisis, Michalis Gerontakis, director of the island's Philharmonic Orchestra, stood in a church and performed for a religious occasion while the ground shook beneath him, an earthquake every 10 to 20 minutes. He told reporters afterward that when you are playing, you cannot feel the quakes, but there were earthquakes when we were at the church. No one can know what will happen. You cannot contend with nature. Nearby, firefighters pitched tents on a basketball court. Families slept in their cars. A tour guide who had lived on the island for 19 years said she had felt earthquakes before, but never anything like this. She booked a ferry to Naxos the next morning, and the monitoring is only beginning to catch up. In December 2025, the research vessel Meteor departed on the MULTI-MAREX expedition to Santorini, deploying 5 new ocean-bottom seismometers for 12 months of recording and testing modular lander systems designed to eventually transmit seafloor data in near real time. Professor Heidrun Kopp, expedition leader and project manager at GeoMar, said the goal is to reliably detect what is happening on the seabed even before the tremors occur. But here is the tension that remains unresolved. The 2025 dike stopped 3 to 5 kilometers below the seafloor in waters less than 200 meters deep. Eleftheria Papadimitriou from Aristotle University of Thessaloniki warned that this rebounding, wave-like process of magma intrusion may not be unique to Santorini, but may be a fundamental mechanism by which magma is transported beneath volcanoes worldwide. The magma did not reach the surface this time, but no one can say whether the next intrusion will have enough pressure, enough buoyancy to break through. The Mediterranean, unlike the Pacific, does not have a tsunami warning system designed for volcanic events. The distances are short. The reaction time is measured in minutes, not hours. How many submarine volcanoes are recharging right now beneath seas where millions of people live, vacation, and sleep at night? With no sensors on the seafloor to detect the first pulse of ascending magma? If two of the most studied volcanoes in Europe were hiding a shared reservoir that no one confirmed until 28,000 earthquakes forced the answer to the surface, what else is connected beneath the seafloor that we simply have not looked at yet? And if the next dike does not stop, if it pushes through that last 3 kilometers of crust beneath shallow water 7 kilometers from shore, how many minutes does Santorini have? The magma is still down there. It has been accumulating for nearly 400 years. And beneath the blue water of the Aegean, 2 volcanoes are still breathing together.